All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Blend with your host, Ricardo D. Rice. And we're going to do a quick recap. So this is episode 3. So in the first episode, we looked at the beginnings, the makings of an organization, the 5 W's in particular, the who, the what, the when, the why, the where, the 2 specific types of leadership, situational leadership, transformational leadership. So we can go over that really quickly. So again, situational leadership is exactly what the name implies. So it's being able to adjust in a situation. So those kind of leaders are typically the ones you see, I call them sinking ship leaders, because when things are really going down, they're the ones you look for because they understand how to adapt in any given situation. Transformational leadership, because we are talking about spiritual leadership, transformational leadership is typically the one you see the most. Why? Because the name implies exactly what it is. It's transformational leadership. And it's the ideology that your words, your leadership, the things you say, the things you do, the places you lead your individuals or parishioners will transform their lives. Now, of course, we know that we don't do the transforming because we're talking about spiritual leadership. So the big man upstairs does the transforming, but we are instruments by which he uses to change in our interactions with the parishioners or the people that are in our ministries or the people that follow our ministries will undertake at our hand. The 5 W's. So, and the example I used, I think in episode 1, we were talking about a young lady, or when we say a young lady, an individual who discovered that their passion was for kids. So from that analogy, or from that example, we discovered all the 5 W's, or we went down all the 5 W's. So really quickly, the example was, in that example was a young lady. The young lady Angela discovered that God had called her to work with kids. So she decided her who was kids, that she had a kids ministry. The what was in what capacity did she's going to serve the kids. So we had to think about various options. She could do a daycare. She could do an after-school program. She could do any number of things, but she chose to do a daycare. So the when, and like I said, the when gets very iffy because with the when, you have to be able to align God's timing with man's timing. So you want to make sure that, 1, did God call you to this particular season? Number 2, is God calling you to do it now or is he calling you to do it later? Because all this ties into the business aspect of it. Because when you're thinking about business, let's say we're going along with the daycare. So with the daycare, she had to think about when are kids in school? When are kids out of school? What is the need? What neighborhood? All that stuff goes into not only the business plan, but also deciding on your timing. So that was the biggest thing with the when. The where, where does she want to put the daycare? What area? What location? Is she going to do it? We'll say Georgia because we're in Georgia, or I'm in Georgia. So does she want to do it in Marietta? Does she want to do it in Alpharetta? Where does she want to put it? I think that's everything. Who, what, when, where, why. So that's pretty much the 5. So you want to think about those kinds of things when you sit down to conceptualize your organization. Because when you can answer those 5 W's, you're probably onto something. And again, all this segues to your business plan. Because in your business plan, you have to decide things like your target audience, your demographic, when, where, all these things tie into your business plan. All right, so on last week, I went in depth into mission statements, core values, and vision statements. So remember, your mission statement, these are the 3 things a mission statement should be. So number 1, a mission statement should be no longer than 1 paragraph. I don't even advise a paragraph because the objective with a mission statement is to summarize what your organization does in about 1 to 2 sentences. Anything longer than that, you're probably going to have a hard time retaining the information, and the ultimate goal is to be able to use your mission statement as an elevator pitch. So again, what is an elevator pitch? Exactly what the name implies. An elevator pitch says, let's say you have the opportunity to get into the elevator with one of your favorite people, and I always use Oprah because most people adore Oprah, present company included. So the ideology is I'm at a function, I get in the elevator, and lo and behold, Oprah's in the elevator. So from the time it takes me from floor 0 to get to the penthouse, which is probably where she's going, I have that amount of time to pitch her my organization. So you say, well, hey, Miss Oprah, how you doing? My name is Ricardo. I have this great organization that revolves around the leadership blend. And she says, well, tell me about your organization. Typically, most folks are going to start rambling. You don't have time for that. So the best thing to do is to have your mission statement. And the shorter your mission statement is, the easier it's going to be to retain the information and to be able to explain what your organization does in that 1 or 2 sentences. So that's why we say elevator pitches, mission statements. So make it as simplistic as possible, which the second one says it should be easily understood by anyone over the age of 12. So don't overcomplicate it. Make it simple. Keep it easy, keep it light, because again, you want to be able to remember it if ever you're networking or you're in an elevator and you only have a couple of minutes. Because again, ultimately, you're going to be networking, you're going to be out there, you're going to be meeting people, and you don't have time to ramble because people are busy, especially now, because people are using on their cell phones. So that you getting them off their cell phone is luck in itself. So if you're able to pull them away from their cell phone, then you definitely want to be able to explain your organization, and the best way to do that is your mission statement. And lastly, it should be easy enough to remember so that anyone could recite it from memory, even under stress. So again, that's the goal. The simpler the mission statement, the easier it is. One example, I always think about Disney. Disney's mission statement, I believe, is to make people happy. That's their mission statement. It's that simple. It's intriguing enough to make you want to know how they do it, but it's simple enough that any employee can remember it. So again, those are kind of things you want to think about with the mission statement. All right, so the core values. With core values, it's usually 4 or 6 words that you will hold near and dear to your organization. Now, because we are talking about spiritual organizations, which are probably ministry warranted, you probably want to keep that in mind when you think about your core values. So it'll probably be words like love, empowerment, stuff like that. Love, empowerment, things of that magnitude. But it's words that are like the cornerstone that you want every member of your organization to remember and to hold near and dear. And they're just one word. So it's 4 to 6 words. All right, so we've been over enough of mission statements, vision statements, core values. Just remember, core values, 4 to 6 words. Mission statements should be about 2 sentences max. Vision statement should be made based on the vision of the organization, and your mission statement is what actually should keep your organization current. So just remember those things. Goals, really quickly. I cannot stress this enough. Goals. Make sure that you set lofty goals, and make sure you don't set unrealistic goals, because the design of goals is to empower you to keep moving and keep striving towards excellence. If you set them too lofty or you set unrealistic goals, they can have the adverse effect. Because what will happen is you'll set unlofty goals and you won't achieve them. And then when you don't achieve them, you get discouraged, you get depressed, all that good stuff, and you feel like you can't obtain or get to the next step. So it's vital that you set goals that are accommodating to what you're doing, to the capacity that once you achieve that, you're empowered to get to your next step. So I cannot stress that enough. So goals are typically short-term, long-term. Short-term goals are goals that can be achieved in 6 months to a year. Long-term goals are typically 3 years to 5 years. So always keep that in mind when you're making goals. And short-term goals should lead you to long-term vision. So any goals that you set should be like stepping stones to your long-term goal. And then your long-term goal should get you to the vision in its inception or its entirety. So remember that, it's stepping stones. And usually what I tell people is decide what the end game is first and then go backwards and create the steps to get you to the end game. So with her, Angela, her goal was to have a daycare and to have a span of daycares across the East and West Coast. So that's the end game. Now we need to go back to the beginning and create the steps. So the 5 W's, and from the 5 W's, you take that and put it into your business plan. And from your business plan, you spin off your marketing plan. And that all will walk you to the vision, which for her, again, is to have the daycares along the East and the West Coast. All right, so let's get into where I stopped the last episode, which is nonprofit organizations. Okay, so your church, your ministry is probably a nonprofit organization. Now, the mere fact that there is profit in it, even though non is first, that tells you what a nonprofit is. It's not for profit. Doesn't mean you don't make one, and doesn't mean you don't aspire to have income. It just means your sole purpose is not to make money. That is a for-profit institution. So the technical term or the technical definition for a nonprofit, and sometimes you'll hear it referred to as an NPO, which is a non-business entity. Or you also hear them say the third sector. So if you ever hear anybody say the third sector, they're talking about nonprofits. All right, so a nonprofit, I'm going to give you the actual definition, is an organization whose purpose is something other than making a profit. They also can be known as a charitable organizations, which is important because when you do legal documentation, you will see the word charitable a lot. Charitable organizations, things of that magnitude, especially when we get into 501s, because that's what everybody really wants to know. So charitable organizations are often dedicated to furthering a particular social cause or advocating for a particular point of view. In economic terms, a nonprofit organization uses its surplus revenues to further achieve its purpose or mission rather than distributing its surplus income to organization shareholders or equivalents as profits or dividends. This is also known as distribution constraint. Okay, so that in itself tells you what you cannot do. I cannot stress this enough. People get in trouble with the IRS for this. You cannot have shareholders. You cannot give dividends with a nonprofit. You are not for profit. One person cannot own a nonprofit. Now, people can be directors. You have to have a board, and even that board cannot take money. That is not your goal. That is not the objective of a nonprofit. The objective of a nonprofit is to bring social awareness to some issue. So that's why you have the American Cancer Association, organizations like that, or to help an underserved community, or things of that magnitude. It's in essence to better the world. We're like flower kids. Our desire is to better the world. We want to enhance life for people who cannot enhance it on their own. That's the goal of a nonprofit. It is not to make money. Now again, on the adverse, you are expected to make money. That's just not your focus. Because when you do your budget for your 501c, they're going to ask you for your budget. And people go, well, why do I need a budget? Because they want to see how you're going to be able to sustain yourself. Because even when you get a grant, they're not giving you the grant for the whole amount that you're going to ask for. They're going to give you a significant amount on the grant, and they're going to look at your budget and do an equation and then decide how much money to actually give you based off the money that you're claiming you're going to make. Now, money can be made from your programs and your services, which you'll see organizations like the Girl Scouts. They sell cookies. The reason they sell cookies is to fulfill their obligation financially so they can continue getting the government money that they're probably getting. Boy Scouts probably the same thing. So your programs and your services, you do not charge a lot because, again, the objective of your programs and services is to better life for other people. So you don't want to charge money you know they don't have. But at the same token, you do want to charge because there is an expectation that you will bring money into your organization even though it's not for profit. So that's your little tidbit about not for profit. Okay, so we've gotten past all the preliminaries. So you discovered, oh, I've been called to something. I've been called to an organization. Now I want to start an organization. I've done my 5 W's. And I forgot about the name. Okay, so let's get into a name of an organization. If you have desires to solidify your organization and make it a real organization, and when I say real, meaning you actually plan on doing all the government paperwork that you're going to need to do, you need to keep that in mind when you think about the name of your organization. So, you want to be something presentable and something that you can put on a letterhead, something you can put on a website, something that will be attention grabbing, but at the same token have a little air of sophistication to it. Especially if you plan on doing 501c, because that will make a major difference, because 501c allows people to give to your organization and then be tax exempt so that they can claim it and get their money back at the end of the year or get a fraction of that money back. So you definitely want to make sure that the name of your organization is something classy, something can be catchy, but not over the top. Now, again, it all depends on what your organization's goal is, because if your organization's goal is to, let's say, save the mudfish of the world, then your organization's name may be a little more creative because, your objective is a little creative. You want to save mudfish, which most people don't think about. I only think about it because I think about Ren and Stimpy, and they had this mudfish that talked. So, yeah, that was my left side of my brain. But in that situation, you can be creative, but definitely make sure that the name of your organization has an air of class to it, but it's inquisitive enough. It makes you inquisitive enough to ask questions and to find out more information about it. So that was a tidbit. All right, so what is the scope of a nonprofit? Because most people will ask me, what can I do and what can't I do? Because honestly, most people find out about what they can't do when they're in trouble with the IRS. So these are the things you can and cannot do. All right, so for a nonprofit, these are the things you can do. You can generate revenue to further the reach of your program and services. 2, you can utilize that revenue to cover paid staff, business expenditures, and operating costs. 3, you can advertise and market programs and services to the general public. 4, you can receive donations, sponsorship, and grants from different sources under 501c tax exemption status. Now, that's a whole different creature. Let me say this. Just because you're incorporated as a nonprofit does not automatically give you 501c. That's a misconception. People say, oh, I'm incorporated, now I'm 501c. No, There's a whole nother process that goes with 501c. So once you get incorporated, which I'm going to go over, once you get incorporated, then you qualify to do the paperwork to do 501c. That was free. I just want to toss that out there. Number 5, nonprofits can become incorporated by their respective states and receive many of the same benefits as for-profit organizations. All right, so that's your 5 things that you can do as a nonprofit. Now again, just because you're incorporated as a nonprofit does not automatically qualify you or give you 501c. I cannot stress that enough because people think that, and they start trying to do stuff that they cannot do without a 501c. Also about what you can cover revenue-wise. Keep in mind, because, and this is for budget purposes, when you have to do your budget. When you're talking about paid staff, the more staff that you have, the more money you're going to have to make. Because oftentimes grants will not cover all of your staffing finances, financial needs. So keep that in mind. Most nonprofits will employ an executive director, probably an administrative assistant, somebody that does community outreach, and probably a finance person, some kind of accountant. Those are typically the 4 things people think about when they think about staffing. So again, definitely your executive director, who is the individual that will handle the day-to-day operations. Definitely an administrator who can handle whatever is coming in, plus whatever the executive director needs. A community outreach person that will handle your programs and services. And lastly, some person that handles financing, whether that be an accountant who's on retainer or something like that. Everybody else should probably be part-time, especially in this scenario we're talking about daycare. Everybody else is probably part-time, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, things of that magnitude. So keep that in mind. The more staff you have, the more money you're going to have to come up with to pay. All right, so what a nonprofit cannot do. They cannot generate revenue to be distributed amongst individuals, investors, shareholders, or board members. They cannot utilize revenue to further personal agendas, board members' desires, or objectives contrary to the mission of a nonprofit. 3, they cannot possess property, equipment, or finances beholding to any one individual or any member of the board. And lastly, they cannot be ran, controlled, or operated by one individual or group of related individuals, which is family. So those are the things you cannot do. The biggest one that was on there that people don't know, you cannot own property. Nonprofits cannot do it. And one person cannot own a nonprofit. And a family cannot run a nonprofit. Now, foundations get different because you hear about family foundations. That's different. But to own a nonprofit, one person cannot do it, and neither can a family do it. So keep that in mind about the things that you cannot do. And again, you can have a board. You're required to have a board. So you can have a board. You just cannot have shareholders, investors, things of that magnitude. Remember, your goal is not to make money. That's not the goal. You still do it, but your focus is not money focused. Your focus is bettering the lives of individuals who cannot better their own lives, and that is your focus. We just went over the scope of a nonprofit, what they can and cannot do. Again, I need you to be mindful of these things because these are the kinds of things that get people in trouble with the IRS, not knowing what they can and cannot do. But again, all right, so that's that. So let's get into, once you understand that, you have answered your 5 W's, you've answered the call of Jesus in whatever capacity it is for your life, and you understand what a nonprofit does. So now your next step is, okay, well, how do I make my nonprofit legal? Well, the first thing you want to do is get incorporated. So again, I'm going to explain stuff. I want to give you the definition too. So if you ever hear these definitions in the streets, you know what they mean. All right, so with incorporation, it is a legal process used to form a corporate entity or company. A corporation is a separate legal entity from its owners with its own rights and obligations. The process for a nonprofit is the same as a for-profit, requiring the submission of their articles of incorporation. All right, that's a very big word. All right, so this is what is in your articles of incorporation. Your articles of incorporation require 1, the business purpose, 2, the name of the business, and 3, the location of the business. So again, articles of incorporation require 1, the business purpose, 2, the name of the organization, and 3, the location of your organization. Now, what you will find, because I've gone through the 501c3 process, that it's okay to use your home address because not every business has an actual building. So it's okay to use your home address. The issue typically is it cannot be a P.O. box. So it usually can be an actual street address. It just cannot be a P.O. box. Okay? In addition to the articles, organizations should also create bylaws for operations. Incorporation for nonprofits protect individuals from liability, since no one individual, I cannot stress that enough, no one individual is responsible for the operating of the organization. Now, there are some other assets to being incorporated. So here are other reasons you want to be incorporated. The simplest version of what incorporation is, though, is pretty much the state recognizes that you're a nonprofit and that you're open for business. That's pretty much what incorporation means. Now, it comes with some other things, like, for one, personal liability protection. If you're incorporated, an incorporated company affords protection from any personal liability for your business debts and obligations. So if someone sues you, they can go after the company, but not you. So that's one of the pluses of being incorporated. Number two, tax benefits. Now, again, with nonprofits, when we start talking about tax stuff, you really get into 501c. And on a side note, I want to get your gears going. So when I say 501c3, of course, that's tax exemption status, meaning you don't pay taxes. And meaning the people that contribute to your organization can pretty much write off their contribution and get it back at the end of the year when they do their taxes. Most people do not know there are more than just, you always hear 501c3. There are other 501cs. So there's 501c3, which is private foundations and public charities. There's 501c4, which is social welfare organizations. There's 501c5, which is labor and agricultural associations. 501c6, which is business leagues. 501c8, which is fraternal beneficiary societies. Most people only hear 501c3, and I was actually guilty of that. I did not know there was more than one. I thought 501c3 was a whole name. It's not. It's 501c, and then the number changes for every entity that goes along with that type of 501c. So remember that. That's a tidbit. Do not worry. I will be going over 501c. It just will not be today, because that's probably 2 episodes, because it's a very long, winding process. But the good thing is, the most of the stuff that I told you to do, if you've already done it, then you've already done half. That's half the battle when you're doing 501c3 paperwork. Let me say this. When I did my 501c3, when you counted all the amendments and stuff that, not amendments, when you count all the documents that had to go with it, I think my application was 70 pages long. Yes, they're asking for a lot of stuff. But again, if you've already thought out the stuff that I've told you to think out and you've already gotten incorporated, then you've already fought half the battle, because they're definitely going to ask you a mission statement. They're going to ask you for your budget. They're going to ask you for an example of your programs and services. And again, this is just to get the wheels turning. But that's all the stuff that's going to go in your 501c3 application or your 501c application. So that was just a little tidbit. That was for free. All right, so back to what I was actually talking about. So again, personal liability protection, tax benefits. The third one is corporate identity. When you're incorporated, now you have credibility for your business. Again, it says that the government, my state government, acknowledges that I operate as whatever the name of my organization is, and we are legal. So when you come in, you can give us your money, because we all love money. You can give us your money, and you know that it's trusted. We've been incorporated. The state recognizes us, so we're good. The next one is raising capital, which is more for profit. So it just gives you the ability to do things. And the last one is unlimited life. You know, once you get your organization incorporated, it has a life of its own. Your business has taken on a life of its own. It's no longer about you. You can actually operate and function as a business. So those are the things you want to do to get incorporated, and we'll talk about the process a little later on. All right, Saints. So we have been over incorporated. We've been over some things as it pertains to tax exemption status. I did the recap. All right, so if you have any questions or you need some elaboration, now of course you can always get me to come speak at your conferences, your seminars. I do workshops, all that great stuff. But if you have any questions, you definitely want to check the website at ricecommunity.com. Remember, I cannot stress this enough. Rice, whenever I say Rice, my last name is spelled with a W. So it's WRICE community.com. So ricecommunity.com. There you can find out more about my radio show, which airs every Monday and Friday from 12 to 2 on IBNX Radio Network. You can hear it on Spotify, SoundCloud, tune in. Definitely tune in, because you'll hear it that live. So tune in. You look up IBNX Radio, and then you look up Talk NX, and then you'll be able to hear the show live every Monday and Friday from 12 to 2. With the Leadership Blend radio show, you get more of a current leadership in its current state. So we're interviewing people from politicians to musicians to CEOs and presidents, giving you a whole different outlook on leadership. Also, if you like reading and you like some of the stuff that I've gone over, you definitely want to buy my book, purchase my book, Calculated Conflict, which is on Amazon, which is the easiest way to get it. So again, that's Calculated Conflict by Ricardo D. Rice. What else? There's so many things. So you have TV, you have radio, you have the book, you have the website. So yeah, every Monday at 3:30, I'm here, same place, same time. And you guys have a great week. And tune into my radio show on this Friday at 12 p.m. on IBNX Radio Network.